religio et secta diabolica, in nomine et virtute Domini nostri Jesu Christi, eradicare et effugare.
Boo Crew, here we are again, live, not really live, we're alive, but we're not live, in person, eating McD's.
Talking about dead people.
Oh no, have we been, you think we're possessed by the satanic McD's cult from last week's story?
No, I think I've been possessed since I was a little kid.
Like in general, or by McDonald's?
I think they possess because of my love for McDonald's. Like,
all right. But to clarify, by McDonald's, not by anything else.
I hope nothing else.
All right.
I mean, we are putting the boys of fall up in the house, so
that's true. That's true. We started. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to start decorating. I'm getting peer pressure from my sister, and you know, she's telling my mom to put the witch out, and which is like, it's this old witch from like the 1990s, right? When outdoor ornaments and stuff were like built to last. So my mom still has one of those. And every time there's a chill in the air, whether it be fall, winter, spring, or summer, my sister insists on saying, "Ma, put the witch out." So this is to you, fam. And to you, Boo Crew. You get to get the insight on my family antics. So welcome to the family, everybody. But for real, we are in true New England style, sipping on some dunks.
Yeah, tell them what you got today. I'm not the only one.
I got a pumpkin cold brew.
Yeah, you did, girl.
Yeah, I did. I was feeling it. I was listening to Red Right Hand. You know that song? Yeah. I was listening to it on my way to go do all the spooky stuff. You don't know it? From Scream? The movie Scream? The Red Right Hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You made me. Yeah.
I made you sing.
It's karaoke hour now. So that got me in the mood, you know, and it's like, it's not super bright outside. There's an overcast, and it's been like that all weekend. It's beautiful. It's chilly out. There's an overcast, but it's really, really nice out. So, I mean, fall is in the air. Actually, happy fall. First day of fall was actually yesterday.
Yeah.
So we're doing it. Oh, and Jack's here.
Jack says hello, everybody.
Jack wants some McDonald's, but he's not getting any. You're not getting any, bro. It's not happening. Not right now. So yes, completely unprofessional. We are eating and drinking and doing our thing right now while we're getting set up for our stories. You're actually going first this week, and I'm excited for it because you have been this has been a clandestine, let's get the word right, clandestine topic. You haven't shared anything with me. That could be bad news. You know what's great? I can edit this because it's going to be like 8 minutes of us straight chewing our food. And I don't really care because I'm enjoying myself. Are you enjoying yourself?
Yep.
And for anyone that has an aversion to chewing and lip smacking, sorry. Sorry about that. But it's happening. It's happening.
It is happening. I'm sorry. I needed some nourishment before I start on this escapade.
So tell me, what's your story about this week?
So, you know how I was staying in true form of, going through where I've lived, and we have now landed in the wonderful state of CT. So thought I would pick it out of the box. So we've talked about all of the, not all of them, but all of the mental institutions and the asylums and everything, and a lot of them have gone away. They're closed down. But I decided to revisit it, not necessarily the asylums for the reason why there was so many asylums. There was a huge vampire panic that happened.
That's why asylums became a thing? Oh, that's one of the reasons why.
One of the reasons.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it was just one of the reasons.
Just one. The biggest reason was consumption.
Oh.
If nobody knows what consumption is, tuberculosis.
The TB.
That's right.
TB. Someone in your family had that, didn't they?
My great grandmother Amy, grandmother's mom.
Your grandmother's mom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. Okay. I like where this is going so far. You know, I have a love for asylums and institutions. There's something about mental health in general that I'm just very attracted to. But these places in particular, these are my places. This is my alley for sure.
Yeah. Well, I kind of figured that it would be, but I'm like not going into specifics about any of the asylums. It's just, and I will get to it later in the story. It absolutely, like when I moved here and you started telling me about all these different places.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot around here.
Huge and beautiful and gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And you know how they would just have balconies upon balconies. Yeah. And they would just take the people out in their beds mm-hmm. and let them, you know, like you knew when you were going there that was it. Yeah. Right. But,
it's the Kirkbride architecture.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah. But there were some, going back earlier before any of these places were really even at stock for you to be sent to. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, the asylums aren't part of my story. This kind of delves back even a lot further than that. And I just find it very interesting of how people's mindsets were. And I try to like fast forward on would we, you know, like in today's eyes, you know, we wouldn't be thinking the way that they were. It fascinates me what used to scare people to the point of them doing the things that they did. And some of them were pretty wild and out there. So
that's fair.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I'm very, I don't know. I love hearing about the history part of things and how people reacted to panics, so to speak. So this is 200 years after the Salem witch trials. Farmers became convinced that their relatives were returning from their grave to feed on the living.
200 years. So that's the 1800s?
Close to, yeah. Starting about 1790.
Oh.
So, yeah. So New England vampire panic was the reaction of an outbreak of tuberculosis, formerly known as consumption, in the 19th century throughout Rhode Island, eastern Connecticut, southern Mass, Vermont, and other areas of the New England states. There are at least a dozen historic cases that have been investigated. In each case, New Englanders dug up the dead, destroyed their internal organs to stop the spread of the disease. Different communities treated the suspected vampires differently. Some simply flipped them over in their graves, while others would decapitate the skull from the body and dissect the femur bones to place it in an X like you would see on the Jolly Roger pirate ships. Crazy, right? So when people saw the remains in the type of formation, this would happen primarily in Plymouth, Mass, and in some parts of Maine. In Connecticut, Vermont, and Rhode Island, residents burned vampires' hearts, sometimes inhaling the smoke as a cure.
I'm shaking my head because you're at I know an uncomfortable amount of what you're saying right now. You have not surprised me once yet, and I'm concerned about how much I know about this.
Okay, so I figured I would just go in order. I don't believe that I have all 12. I think that I plucked out a handful of them in chronological order so that we could kind of just go through one where they were from in the States and how diverse it kind of got with how they treated the bodies and the family.
Okay.
So the earliest known case in New England vampirism to have name attached to it was Rachel Harris of Manchester, Vermont in 1790. The year after her death, her widower, Captain Isaac Burton, married her stepsister, Huldah. Before long, Huldah began exhibiting systems similar to Rachel's, and family and friends therefore reasoned that Rachel was the culprit. In February of 1793, more than 500 Manchester residents braved frigid temperatures to watch the liver, heart, and lungs be removed from Rachel's exhumed corpse, I should say, not body, and burned on the blacksmith's forge. According to some versions of this story, portions of the organs were preserved to make medicine for holdup, although dying shortly after in September. But following her death, the good people of Manchester realized the error of their ways. Maybe, maybe not. They reasoned that perhaps Rachel hadn't been a vampire at all, but rather a witch.
Oh, vampires and witches.
I know. I'm circling around all the things.
Good.
So she went from being a vampire to being a witch, since it didn't work. The next victim that we have up is Abigail Staples of Cumberland, Rhode Island, 1796. So the Cumberland Town Council granted permission for Stephen Staples to exhume the body of the 23-year-old daughter, Abigail, who had died of consumption. Shortly after her death, her sister Lavinia had started showing familiar signs and symptoms of consumption. Lavinia told of dreams in which a shadowy figure sat heavily on her chest and drew out her breath. During one of the dreams, she reportedly called out Abigail's name. The town officials consented that Staples could try an experiment to save Lavinia's life, despite noting the decision was made against the better conscience of the council. There is no record of what came of the exhumation, or for that matter, of Lavinia. So that one's a ooey, we don't know. Okay, so we're moving down a state, going to John Barber of Griswold, New London County. He was born 1788, passed 1843. They exhumed his body shortly after. But I am going to fast forward to 1990 for a moment, because there were some children playing in a gravel pit that had unearthed some human skulls, leading to the discovery of an old farm burial ground that had belonged to the Walton family. Night, John boy.
It's spelled different though. It's spelled with a D, isn't it?
No.
It's Walton.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of was the Walton family.
I thought it was Walden. Oops, my bad.
Most of the skeletons were unremarkable, but one was in a coffin marked with JB55 in tacks on the lid. The skeleton appeared to have been exhumed and reburied approximately 5 years after death, with its head and femurs removed and placed on the chest in the manner of skull and crossbones. The rib cage had been broken open, presumably to remove the heart. Later, DNA research suggested that the skeleton was that of a farmer, John Barber, with the tacks on the coffin lid, therefore his initials and age at death. A nearby coffin was similarly labeled NB13, likely his son Nathan Barber, who died in 1826, aged 13. This identity was confirmed through further DNA research in 2022. There was an unnamed New Ipswich resident of 1810. So Dr. John Clough of New Ipswich, New Hampshire, reported the influence of the mind on physical organization in Boston Medical and Surgical Journal, volume 21, 1840. In connection with these superstitions, I cannot omit to mention a circumstance which occurred in this town, New Ipswich, not 30 years since, and similar occurrences probably occurred in many other towns in New England. This was disinterring a human body, which belonged to a family all strongly predisposed to consumption, for the purpose of removing the heart, which was burned, the ashes of which were considered a sovereign remedy to those of the family who were still living, and might be afflicted with the same disease. This only illustrates the fact that those elements of character which held such magic sway over the minds of men in ancient times have not ceased altogether to influence the community in our comparatively enlightened day. Are you liking it so far?
Yeah.
Right, we're getting there.
What's this have to do with asylums?
Mind your own self. Just people got sent to asylums after this to go die. It really didn't have anything to do with asylums. This was before the asylums.
You said that people went to asylums for vampirism.
No. No. We'll take that part out.
Because of the TB?
Yeah.
Okay. Continue.
Okay. All right. So the next family that we are bringing to light is the Saladay family. The family of Philip Saladay came from Switzerland, bought and settled on a lot in French Grant soon after the opening of the country for settlement. Consumption developed in the family sometime after their location in Ohio. The head of the family and the oldest son died of it as others began to manifest symptoms. When they attempted to stop the progress of the disease by exhuming the remains of the family members and burning the heart, lungs, and liver, this was done in the winter of 1816 through 17 in the presence of a large concourse of spectators who lived in the surrounding neighborhood and by Major John Amos Wheeler of Wheelersburg. Samuel Saladay was the one they disinterred and offered up as a sacrifice to stop, if possible, the further spread of the disease. But like other superstitious notions, the regard to curing diseases, it proved to be a failure for them as well. The other members of the family continued to die off until the last one was gone, except George. So he was the only remaining living person out of the Saladays. Frederick Ransom of South Woodstock, Windsor County, Vermont, died of tuberculosis on February 14th, 1817 at the age of 20. This is so sad. They're like dying so young. His father was worried that Ransom would attack his family. So he had him exhumed and his heart burned on a blacksmith's forge. Ransom was a Dartmouth College student from a very well-to-do family. It was unusual that he should fall victim to the vampire panic, which was most common among less educated communities. Henry David Thoreau wrote in his journal of 26 September in 1859, "The savage in man is never quite eradicated. I have just read of a family in Vermont whose several of its members, having died of consumption, just burned the lungs and hearts and liver of the last deceased, in order to prevent any more from having it," as a reference to contemporary superstition. When rural Rhode Islanders moved west into Connecticut, locals perceived them as uneducated and vicious, which was partially due to the Rhode Islanders' belief in vampirism. Newspapers were also skeptical, calling belief of vampirism an old superstition and a curious idea. While the press dismissed this practice as superstition, the burning of the organs was widely accepted as a folk medicine in other communities. In Woodstock, where local belief was still present, town records report hundreds of onlookers attending the burning of Frederick Ransom's heart. So his was kind of famous because he was one of the more educated of the dozen that there is data on. There was another anonymous sibling of Boston, Mass. In Suffolk County. So in 1873, Dr. Lucy Abel reported to Mass State Board of Health, "She should be sorry to be understood as recommending drunkenness as a cure for consumption. But I have known several instances where nearly all the family from 5 to 9 children have successively died of vitis. Finally, one of the boys, from sheer desperation, took to excessive drinking of alcoholic stimulants. These boys are now past midlife and enjoying good health when last heard of."
So they just had to get wasted and they would beat consumption?
Yeah, and she hated to report that because, you know, I mean...
Become an alcoholic. Don't get TB.
Right.
Wow.
In 2 families, not less than 5 or 6 victims, and each were carried off by consumption. So the alcoholism is working, is what I'm getting from this.
Or they were just lucky. Maybe they didn't have like a really bad case of consumption.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well,
This
the
is
next
weird.
family was the Spalding family.
This went from asylums to vampires to alcoholism.
Don't forget witches.
Oh, and witches.
Yeah.
How can I forget witches?
Yeah. All right, so we are moving to the Spalding family of Dummerston, Vermont in 1859, where in his journal, Henry David Thoreau wrote, "The savage in a man is never eradicated. I have just read a family in Vermont who several of its members, having died of consumption, just buried the lungs and heart and liver of the last to prevent any more from having it." At the time, Thoreau himself had long been battling TB, of which he would die 3 years later, although in his case, no one seemed to have suspected vampire involvement. As for the episode to which Thoreau referred, it's likely the 1790s ordeal of the Spalding family. Having lost 6 of his 11 adult children to consumption, Lieutenant Leonard Spalding was desperate. When yet another daughter grew ill, the body of the most recently deceased child was dug up and the vital organs removed and burned. Incidentally, one vampire-adjacent belief of the day was that vines would grow between buried caskets, and that once all the burials in the plot had been so connected, another family would die. When Spalding's son Reuben was buried in 1794, his grave was set apart from those of his other family members, possibly to break the chain. Is Sarah Tillinghast of Exeter, Rhode Island. Sarah was the first of Snuffy Tillinghast's 14 children to die. When his surviving children claimed that Sarah continued to visit them at night, it might have seemed part of the natural grieving process. But by 1799, 5 more Tillinghast children had died of consumption and another was gravely ill. When the bodies of the dead were exhumed, all except Sarah were found to be in advanced stages of decomposition. Her heart was removed and burned in front of the family home. So another family, the Young family from Rhode Island, Miss Nancy Young died at 19. Her sister commenced to a rapid decline in health with sure indications that she must soon follow Nancy to the grave. When Nancy's other siblings began to decline, their father, Captain Levi Young, asked his neighbors and friends to exhume and burn her remains, while all the members of the family gathered around and inhaled the smoke from the burning remains. This cure apparently did not work as 5 more children died. I think we're getting to the one that you know about. So the Ray family in JB of Jewett City, Connecticut in 1845. So 24-year-old Lemuel? Okay, so in 1845, Lem Ray died of consumption at age 24. His death was followed by that of his father a few years later, and then his brother. 3 years later, when Lem's oldest brother Henry fell ill, the family took to drastic measures, again exhuming the body and burning it, although Henry died despite their efforts of trying to cure him. So we've made it to the end, the very last recorded instance of vampirism has been probably the best documented of the suspected. Vampirism of New England was of one Miss Mercy Brown. In 1883, Mercy's mother died of consumption. 7 months later, Mercy's 20-year-old sister died. And a couple of years after that, both Mercy and her brother Edwin grew ill. Edwin was sent away to recover, but Mercy soon died. Mercy's father, George, was by then desperate to save his remaining children, and though he was said to not believe in vampires, consented to having the family's bodies exhumed. As the Providence Journal reported on March 21st, 1892, Dr. Harold Metcalf, the medical examiner of the district who examined the bodies, is not one to believe in vampire superstition. He made his examination without exceptional results, according to his own belief, but found in one of the bodies to the satisfaction of many of the other people down there, a sign which they regarded as proof. When he removed the heart and the liver from Mercy's body, a quantity of blood dripped therefrom. The vampire, the attendants of the doctor said, and then, conforming to the theory of the necessity of destroying the vampire, burned the heart and liver. Once burned, what once was the heart and liver were mixed with water and given to the surviving brother to drink. They were in hopes that this would stop the influence of the undead. TB was responsible for approximately 1 out of every 4 deaths in the eastern U.S. To this day, TB remains the world's most deadliest infectious disease, responsible for well over 1 million deaths each year. As it happened, the New England vampire scare started winding down towards the end of the 19th century. Perhaps not coincidentally, this was around the same time that Robert Koch identified the bacteria responsible for causing tuberculosis. A reporter for the Providence Journal covered the infamous Mercy's Brown exhumation, and the story spread. It reached newspapers all the way to New England, and it is said it may have even inspired Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. That's it. I don't know. What do you think? You know about this. You've lived here.
Yeah. I just think that it's funny how vampires, witches.
I feel like I should have gone more into like the Jewett City part, because I feel like that's the part that was that part that you knew about?
Yeah. You can go visit their graves.
Oh, shit. No, really?
Yeah.
Let's go.
We could go right now if you wanted.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take you there.
Okay.
You can go visit their graves. There's like a little it's called the Devil's Chair. It's in that cemetery also. It's supposed to be cursed.
Wait, you've told me about this place.
Have I?
Like the chair is okay, wait. Is this the same place
No.
where okay.
No, that's the Little People Village. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. No. It's yeah. This cemetery is open to the public. You can go there and you can look at the graves. It's not the best. I'll tell you right now, it's not like the best taken care of cemetery, which is kind of sad, but that's where the Jewett City vampires are located. Also, when they dug them up after being in the ground for like over a year or whatever, they were perfectly preserved. It looked like they had just buried them. There was no sign of decomposition or anything. Not no sign, but it was very slow decomp, which was also why it was suspected that they were vampires.
So when I was reading through this,
I think there was also blood found on one of their mouths.
So
why didn't you put it in? You're talking about tuberculosis. Talk about vampirism. You talked about TB.
So on some of them, being that it's in New England and them being buried, the ground freezes. What freezes in the ground, I mean, it kept their bodies together.
But their organs, their insides were still wet. That's the thing that doesn't make sense. They've been down there for a year or plus, however long it was.
Okay, but depending on when they buried them, their bodies would freeze. So if they didn't drain
Well, first
bodies,
of all, back in the day, they wouldn't bury bodies in the cold weather. They would store their bodies until the weather got warmer. And that's why they would put people in like root cellars and in ice houses and stuff, because you couldn't break the ground. So if you died in the colder months, they would stow you away. And then as it got warmer, then they would dig down and they would bury you.
Yeah, but that body would still be frozen.
No, it's preserved, not frozen. And if they're doing that, they're not, your insides are not, it doesn't, they buried them. And then a year later, dug them up. And remember, these are not caskets like we know caskets today. These are pine boxes.
Yeah.
There's no type of actual agent like lacquer or that thereof. You know, they're not metal and they're not sealed tight. They're just coffins. So that was the weird thing, is that everything, like, you shouldn't have wet blood inside your body after a year of being buried.
Well, Mercy did.
Yes, she did. And was she the one that had blood in her mouth, or was it the Jewett City vampires?
The only one that really talked about having, like, the blood was Mercy. So very well could have been. Maybe I should have dug deeper into the Jewett City ones. But no, yeah, she was the one. Yeah, that's when they pulled her organs out, there was blood dripping from her organs.
Right. But when they dug one of them up, there was blood near the corner of their mouth. Oh,
okay. I did not read that
you also have to remember, and I'm not saying that this is what happened to these people, because it doesn't make sense that after a year you still have wet organs in your body. But sometimes people were buried alive. People would think that they were dead, right? They would be pronounced dead, but they'd really just be in a deep sleep or comatose or what have you. And then they'd be buried dead. And that was another thing that was in the, I think in the Jewett City story, that there were scratches on the inside of the coffin.
That's scary. Could you imagine that being the way that you go?
No.
Already sick, and you just,
Like, let me take a rest for a few days. My body can't handle it. It's going to shut down and try to repair itself. Then you wake up in a fucking box underground.
Yeah. So I grew up not knowing that this vampire panic was actually a thing, because from my great grandmother, Amy, she was sent to the desert. And it was told to her that she would live longer and have a better life if she was in a dry climate.
Which is interesting, because when you and I have talked about it in the past, it was thought that the sea air would help the lungs of those with TB. That's why they would, a lot of the sanatoriums, which are what they were used for tuberculosis wards, were near the ocean, like Seaside Sanatorium.
Right.
It's near the ocean. So they would roll the patients out to these enclosed patios, open up all these huge windows, and just let the sea air hit have them inhale the sea air. And the salt water, the salt and everything was supposed to heal. But I mean, honestly, no one knew. It was one of those things where, I mean, remember, being a doctor, while profession, is still a practice.
Right.
They're still practicing. They're always going to practice. It's an unknown, medicine is unknown until it's known, until it's proven, until it's tested, until it's successful. And that takes a very long time. Hence why so many people died during that massive TB outbreak back then. It was a good story. Lots of little vampire pockets.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was mostly about TB, but not intentionally supposed to be about consumption, but just how they looked at it as, once everybody started dying off, that they considered the one that just passed to come back and make the others gravely ill.
It's good that you did a vampire one, since we watched Salem Lot the other day.
We did.
Salem's Lot, which is a good book and a good movie. So the moment that we've all been waiting for 3 weeks, maybe 4. Was it 3? 3 weeks, maybe? The long-awaited Arkansas story.
Yay!
What's your view on serial killers?
Oh God. My view on serial killers.
Yeah. What are your what are your feelings on serial killers?
I could live without meeting one. But you know what? If I take that back. If I knew that I would not be a victim, I would want to pick their brain apart.
Yeah. I mean, that's been like the lifelong desire of scientists and doctors. They always ask serial killers that are caught in prison, that are on death row or in prison for life, if they can have their brain once they pass. Some say yes, some say no. I think Ted Bundy said yes to that. Do you think, well, you and I just started watching, this is my third time watching it, your first time, Dexter, which, spoiler alert.
Spoilers!
Yeah, it sucked me in really fast. Like sometimes, I mean, PH knows, it takes me like 3 or 4, 5 episodes to get going, but
this is a good one. I mean, this is, I know it's like a serial killer it's a serial killer with a code, and there are serial killers that do have codes. Don't get me wrong. They're not all, which is interesting, right? A serial killer that has a code. It might not be necessarily a code that you and I would agree with, but they have their own code. They stand by their own rules. They make certain agreements with themselves that they're going to choose certain people. But what if this story kind of hit upon serial killers, but in a different way? Meaning, what if there were more serial killers to be in this world?
I don't think that we hear about them, whether it's that they're not being caught or the news is caught up on some other catastrophe that's happening.
Well, you remember a few years ago when you were recently moved out of Georgia and there was a possible serial killer. There were serial killings that were happening in a particular area.
Yeah, it made me want to go back because, you know.
Oh, you just go back and hang out in the area and see if you can catch the guy?
No. Well, I mean, I feared for my daughter, but
yeah, for sure.
I don't like that there's serial killers. We all have our problems.
Right. But this story asks the question of, what if you are destined to be a serial killer, but don't necessarily make it to that quote unquote level, right? Humans are simple, but so complex at the same time. We're all gray characters in the world, neutral characters. We all have a little good and a little bit bad mixed within us. There's a spectrum from sane to insanity. I truly believe that. So why not a spectrum from docile to murderous? That was my main question when reading this. This is a story about a serial killer to be that never quite made it to where he was going.
Get out of here.
And this is the legend of Gerald Floyd Bettis, better known as the Dog Boy of Quitman, Arkansas.
I'm here for it. Oh, this sounds good.
Born in 1954, Gerald Floyd Bettis was a deeply unsettling figure from an early age. Even as a young boy, his behavior veered sharply away from the innocent mischief typical of children his age. Raised in a small town, rural town of Quitman, Arkansas, which is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. I was looking at real estate there. Oh, I've never been to Arkansas, but I can understand why people would want to live there. This is a town where everyone knew each other. Gerald stood out, and not for achievements or likability, but for the growing sense of fear and dread that surrounded him. Gerald's parents, Floyd and Aline Bettis, were older than most parents at the time, and it seemed from the beginning that they struggled with controlling their son's increasingly erratic behavior. While other children in the town played outside or attended school events, Gerald spent much of his time alone, hidden away in the confines of his family's large and imposing house on Mulberry Street. The Bettis home itself became sort of a fortress for Gerald's dark activities, and the boy's peculiar behavior gradually became the source of gossip and worry among the locals. It wasn't long before neighbors began noticing disturbing signs of Gerald's cruelty, particularly towards animals. Stray dogs and cats in Quitman began to disappear, and whispers spread through the town that Gerald was behind it. Neighbors would later recount horrifying scenes they had witnessed. Gerald luring stray dogs into his yard, only to imprison them in makeshift cages he constructed in the basement of his home. These dogs were not just confined. They were subjected to bizarre, often grotesque experiments, revealing an early penchant for sadism that would only intensify as Gerald grew older. One neighbor remembered seeing Gerald dragging a dog into the house by its hind legs, while another reported hearing strange noises, whimpering, growling, and sharp yelps emanating from the basement late at night. Children in Quitman were warned to stay away from the Bettis house, but curiosity often got the better of them, leading the tales of terrifying encounters with Gerald, whom they began to refer to as Dog Boy. By the time he reached adolescence, Gerald's reputation as a violent and dangerous individual had solidified. The townspeople viewed him with a mix of fear and revulsion, avoiding the Bettis home whenever possible. So there was actually an add-on to this house that Gerald put on, and it was said that he put the add-on to the house so he could store more animals, so he could torture them.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Was it just always like cats and dogs?
Yeah, it was mainly dogs.
Oh my God.
It was mainly dogs. His cruel treatment of animals was not just a hobby or a phase. It was a precursor to the even more disturbing behavior he would later exhibit toward his own parents. The dark nickname, Dog Boy, stuck with him for life. His relationship with his elderly parents, Floyd and Eileen Bettis, grew increasingly strained. He was domineering and abusive, not just verbally, but physically. According to local accounts, Gerald kept his parents essentially imprisoned in their own home, controlling their every move. Some claim that his mother was confined to the upper floors of the house for long periods, unable to leave due to her son's tyranny. The situation escalated further when Gerald's father, Floyd, died under mysterious circumstances. Though no official cause of death was linked to foul play, whispers circulated in Quitman that Gerald may have been involved in his father's death. Gerald was actually suspected of throwing his father down the stairs, and that would be the suspicious circumstance of him passing, but there was no proof. These rumors only fed into the growing legend of Gerald Bettis. By the time Gerald Bettis reached adulthood, his menacing reputation had deeply rooted itself in the small town of Quitman. This quiet farming community, established in 1881, had long been a place where life moved slowly, and everyone knew their neighbor's business. With a population hovering around 740 residents for decades, word of Gerald's unsettling behavior spread quickly, and as it did, his story took on a life of its own. The town's isolation, nestled within rural Arkansas, created a perfect environment for the legend of Dog Boy to flourish unchecked, transforming Gerald Bettis from a disturbed man into a figure almost cloaked in myth. In Quitman, Gerald Bettis wasn't simply remembered as a local terror who mistreated animals and brutalized his own family. He became something far darker. To many, it seemed as though Gerald had been touched by an evil force, almost as if he were cursed from birth. The tales of his cruelty grew more horrifying with each retelling. At the heart of the legend was the Bettis family home, a sprawling old home that stood as a monument to the horrors that had taken place within its walls. The once humble residence, which had housed generations of the Bettis family, was now viewed as something much more sinister, a place of lingering darkness. The house itself became as infamous as the man who lived there, adding an air of mystery and fear that surrounded Gerald's legacy. Locals spoke of strange happenings at the house even during Gerald's lifetime. Neighbors reported hearing unsettling noises coming from within, strange thumps in the night, inexplicable creaks, and the chilling sound of dogs howling, even when no animals were present. Others swore they saw shadow figures moving past the windows when the house was supposed to be empty. These eerie occurrences only deepened the fear surrounding Gerald and his home, solidifying his status as something more than just a man. He was almost a specter, his very presence casting a dark cloud over the town. Gerald Bettis died in the late 1988 while serving time in prison, reportedly from a drug overdose at the age of 34. However, even in death, the stories about him did not die down. Instead, they only grew more intense. With his passing, the Bettis home became a beacon for tales of paranormal activity, with locals and outsiders alike reporting eerie encounters. Some claim to have seen Gerald's ghosts still wandering the house, while others spoke of phantom dogs roaming the property, their tortured howls echoing through the quiet streets at night. The most terrifying stories, however, came from those who dared to enter the Bettis home. According to local lore, objects would move on their own, chairs sliding across the floor, doors slamming shut without warning, and strange lights flickering in rooms that hadn't been wired for electricity in years. Some visitors claimed to feel an oppressive force in the house, as if something unseen was watching them, waiting for them to leave. Others reported being touched or pushed by invisible hands, their skin breaking out in goosebumps, even in the warm Arkansas summer. For many, the house had become a living entity, haunted by the malevolent spirit of Jared Bettis. And one specific story that I came across was about a man named Ed Munnerlin, and he was out of Little Rock. He had an eerie encounter at the house. He was a former pilot with Federal Express, FedEx, and was working on remodeling the home back in 2007. He preferred to work on the house at night because he said that there were too many people that were curious about the ghost and wanted to come in. So he claims to have actually seen the ghost of Gerald Bettis, looking at him several times. Oh, could you imagine? In this article that I found, he said, quote, "He was this huge, weird-looking cat with long brown hair, creepy eyes, and great big arms and hands. He walked right in front of me and glared at me. Right after I saw him, he walked through the wall and disappeared."
I would shit my pants and then run.
I think he called... See, when I first read it, I was like, oh my God, it was a fucking hairy cat. I think it was slang for... He was a weird-looking cat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But still, my mind was like, oh my God, he turned into a cat.
I know. I thought that's where you were going with it because he tortured animals.
Yes.
He got turned into a cat in his afterlife.
Can you imagine? Oh my God, a big-ass cat, from the Broadway show Cats, just like this big guy in a leotard and a furry collar. Oh. To this day, residents of Quitman warn curious visitors not to linger too long near the old Bettis house, lest they too fall victim to the darkness that still seems to hang heavy in the air around it. Gerald Bettis may be gone, but the terror he unleashed on Quitman lives on, an enduring reminder of a man who left a legacy of fear and haunting that time has yet to erase. Yeah, so that's the story of Dog Boy. He wasn't a serial killer.
Yeah, but he was like the start of one.
He was the start of one. So, and my mind was like, oh my God, how many people are like that in this world? They're just roaming around. I mean, it said that in your lifetime, you walk past or in the presence of at least 8 murderers.
Wow.
Right? And actively in the U.S. at any given time, there are 25 to 50 serial killers, active serial killers.
That's crazy.
But how many are just at the brink? Right?
One strand. Okay, so question, is the house still there?
So the house is still there.
Get out. Over the years, since he went to prison, so obviously...
He was a young guy when he died. He was 34.
He deaded his dad.
Well, supposedly. Well, here's the thing. He went to prison for elder abuse, for beating on his mom and not taking care of her and stuff. And so he went to prison. He also had a drug problem. And in prison, he overdosed.
Jesus.
Yeah. So supposedly his father died, right? Because he fell. But there's speculation that Gerald threw him out.
Jesus.
Yeah. Well, he was a big guy. And his parents were older. So his mother was alive when he went to prison.
Okay.
So
I feel so bad for this woman.
What happened was he was seen pushing her to get into the house, and one of the neighbors called the cops, and they did a welfare check. And at that point, she told them what was going on, and that's when he went to prison. And then he died of the drug overdose. So, but she still lived in that house while he was in prison, and then he died, and then she died.
So she had to live there with all of that just menace of...
If she could even see it, if it was even affecting her. Yeah. But I did do a deep dive on the house because I wanted to see what it looked like, right? So I found a picture of the house, and it's this cute little, it's not little, it's a good sized house. It's yellow on Mulberry Street.
That's so cute.
Right? Then I noticed something. I noticed that, normally when you look up a house, you have Zillow and Redfin and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, well, let me take a chance. Because when we were looking for our house, we would click on houses that were off the market just to see if we could see any pictures.
Yeah.
So I clicked on the Zillow ad and it's off market. Someone lives there now.
Get out of here.
Oh, yeah. Like they totally renovated the inside, which leads me to all the pictures I found of the actual inside of the house.
Get out of here.
And not only did I find it, I found it before it got renovated for where the current, I'm assuming the current owners or the owners right before the current owners lived, and before that. So I have pictures of it completely like cleared out, like before someone moved in there. And like when there were parts of it boarded up. And then when someone bought it, renovated it, and then put it back on the market. So I have 2 sets, which I'm going to put all of the picture. I'm going to put the link. You know what? I should just make a Google Doc because there's so many pictures and I don't want to take up too much space on the site. So I'll put the link. I'll put a Google Doc and I'll put a link with all the pictures. There's like 50 something pictures. Because normally you don't see that when it's off market. And I was like, oh my God, with everything that's surrounding this house, you would think, because even like Amityville, right? If you look up Amityville,
you can see pictures of the house inside.
You can see old pictures.
Old pictures.
You can see crime scene pictures, and you can see if you dig deep enough, you can find pictures of the house when it was put on the market and everything. Before, I mean, it always had hype, but like also like before the hype, like before the Conjuring universe and all that. But like you really have to look. This was so easy. It was 1 click away. And then I went into Redfin just to see if there was anything different. And then I found the second set of photos. So there's like 50 something photos of this place. And it's nuts. Because it was like jackpot. Like you never find that, especially in an infamous house like this.
Yeah. So that leads me to, do the people that live there now know what happened in that house?
Of course. Well, and the people that live there now, I don't know who they are. But, it comes up like the property taxes and everything. Like, I kind of went deeper than most.
You always do.
So, like, the people that are there now are, like, my age, right?
So have they interviewed them?
I don't know. But I checked the surrounding houses. I checked the whole damn street. Everyone around them in their 60s and their 70s. They were all around when it happened. So these people are literally surrounded by the people that witnessed and experienced all
this. Had to go through it all.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. God, I could only imagine.
They're probably getting knocks on their door all the time. Because I was ready for you to say that, like, the infamous paranormal.
No,
people went there.
Like I said, it's not a vacant house. Like people live there, and you know what? There's no fence around the house, and it's a nice piece of property. It's not like Amityville. Like Amityville has a fence around it. There's cameras, heavily watched by the police and by the neighborhood itself. Like that neighborhood is very protective of that house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even us driving by it.
People were watching us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also noticed this house, back to the Arkansas house on Mulberry, has changed hands a lot. A lot. I was looking at the pricing history and like the purchase history. So like since 1985, it's switched hands like 6 times. And a lot of times it was taken off market and put back on. But also, it's one of the most expensive houses on that street, which I think is really funny. It's like severe, like $100,000 more.
Get out of
than
here.
Every other house.
Because they want you to be serious about buying it.
Probably. I'll let you see all the photos. It's creepy.
So people that do regularly paranormal lockdowns and overnights and like,
have you ever seen one about? I mean, there has to be something out there.
There's got to be something.
We're gonna have to look to see if any of the ghost hunters that have TV shows have gone.
Yeah, because I was waiting for you to say that
you can go.
The one that we always watch went there or something, but
no, I've never heard of this place. I didn't know. When you picked Arkansas, I was like, well, let me go look this up. I couldn't believe it.
It's so sad though.
Not even one strand away. He was one opportunity away.
Yeah.
There's a difference. And that's what I mean. Like, what's the spectrum? There's got to be a serial killer spectrum.
Was he fully educated? Like, did he make it through school? Like, I have all the questions about this. See, that this is what would happen with me being in front of a serial killer. Like, Are they like on genius level of like academics, or are they not? Are they, some are not? I don't, and they just have like these tendencies. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't say. I mean, I know he went to school, but if he finished, that's a whole different story. If you look at this street, if you look at this neighborhood, it's not Geecheville. Like, it's not this like rundown, nasty area of the town. It's a really nice, respectable area. So like,
Well, I mean, if there's only 700 and something people,
740, yeah.
I would think most of the communities would be respectable.
Yeah, I mean, but like, it's not like he came from a troubling background. So that's why the whole presumption of it's the house that's making him do it. It's the house has them under this influence. I just think he was a troubled person. I think that he was on, like I said, I think we're all on a spectrum. I think he was more on the spectrum towards being a murderer.
Yeah. No, I would have so many questions for him.
Yeah, if he would even answer. I mean, he was just a peculiar person. And I don't think that there were a lot of people around him. Like, I want to know where his anger stemmed from. I want to know if the current owners of the house experience anything.
Or like, did you get the house saged? Did you put salt around it? Do you like?
There were also reports of a soldier being seen on the steps or in the doorway of the house, which was one of the relatives,
the ancestors.
That was.
So is this like farmy kind of land, or was it
no
just in a community?
It's a farming community, but this soldier was World War I era soldier.
Hobby farmish?
No, not hobby farm, like actual farming community.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was like passed down and passed down and passed down. So people actually farmed the land. Wow.
It's very sad, but it also intrigues me, wanting to know more about, wanting to further investigate my theory on the serial killer spectrum, the SKS. If I only thought about this when I was doing my thesis in college, maybe I would have finished college. So.
Crazy. That was a good one.
And that wraps up another episode of Paranormal Howl Hour. We hope you enjoyed the ghostly tales and spine-tingling stories we've shared tonight. If you've got a thirst for more supernatural secrets and eerie encounters, make sure you like and subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on all our favorite podcast platforms. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. We're also available on iHeartRadio. So no matter where you turn in, we've got you covered. Want to join the conversation or share your own paranormal experiences? Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. We would love to hear your short stories and spooky theories, so don't be shy. Send your stories over to boocrewhq@hotmail.com with a chance to be featured on an episode of the Howlcast. Again, that's boocrewhq@hotmail.com.
Because we're hot.
But not male. We're ridiculous.
I know.
Your support keeps the haunt alive and helps us bring more spine-chilling content. Until next time, keep your lanterns lit and your minds open. The shadows are always lurking. Keep howling.